3 teams who should pursue a trade for Grizzlies Patrick Beverley. While they have not made a single move in NBA free agency, the Memphis Grizzlies have been a busy team this offseason in terms of preparing for the future. After going 38-34 last season and winning a game on the road in Utah in the first round, the Grizzlies seem to be way ahead of schedule in terms of building with their young core, which is why they made some of the moves they did this summer. Jonas Valanciunas was a big part of their success in the paint last season, but Memphis moved him and some draft picks before the 2021 NBA draft in a deal that gave them the 10th pick in the draft, Eric Bledsoe, Steven Adams and some other draft picks. However, Eric Bledsoe's time in Memphis was very short-lived. Last night the Grizzlies and Clippers finalized a deal that would send Bledsoe to Los Angeles in exchange for Rajon Rondo, Daniel Oturu and Patrick Beverley. Now, Memphis has 17 players under contract for next season, so it is very clear that they will be looking to move on from some guys. One of which could very well end up being newly acquired Patrick Beverley, who is entering the final season of his contract. Over the last 4 seasons in Los Angeles, Beverley has turned himself into one of the more notable perimeter defenders in the league, and while his offense gets talked down on a lot, he actually has not been that bad of a two-way threat. The veteran guard only averaged 8.0 points per game during his 4 seasons with the Clippers, but he shot 39.5% from deep, making him an ideal 3-and-D threat at either guard spot. Memphis could definitely look to keep Beverley around, especially since they have no long-term liability tied to him, and he could add a lot to their perimeter defense with guys like Dillon Brooks and Kyle Anderson, but he could also draw a fair amount of interest from other teams around the league in a potential second trade. With this said, let's take a look at 3 teams who should pursue now Grizzlies guard Patrick Beverley. Boston Celtics. Moving Kemba Walker was a huge move made by Brad Stevens and the Boston Celtics this offseason, but now they have some questions to answer in their backcourt. Marcus Smart could end up being their starting point guard, and they do also have guys like Josh Richardson, Dennis Schroeder and second-year man Peyton Pritchard, who has looked great in Summer League, in their backcourt, but it still feels like Boston is missing something. Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown are all-star level players. This team added some depth and they should be able to grow from where they were defensively a season ago, but adding Beverley to be a spark off the bench next to Marcus Smart in the backcourt could make the Celtics a very tough defensive team. Given their cap situation right now, the Celtics could end up having a hard time being able to absorb Beverley's contract, and they would likely have to get rid of guys like Chris Dunn and Romeo Langford, which is something Memphis would most likely not be interested in. The whole point of trading Beverley would be to free up a roster spot, so taking on more contracts is not really of interest to the Grizzlies. Figuring out a deal to get Pat Bev to the Celtics would definitely be complicated, but he is absolutely the kind of veteran they should be pursuing at some point during the 2021-2022 season. With the likes of the Nets, 76ers, Bucks, Heat and Bulls all bettering themselves and looking like real contenders in the Eastern Conference, the Boston Celtics still seem to be stuck in their bottom-tier spot as a playoff team in the East, which is why they have to be willing to make semi-big moves. Finding a way to acquire Patrick Beverley would not be league-altering in any way for the Celtics, but this move would absolutely make them better defensively and give them that extra little bit of depth they need in their backcourt to be a real contender. New Orleans Pelicans. As mentioned before, the Pelicans and Grizzlies already made a deal this offseason involving the likes of Jonas Valanciunas, Eric Bledsoe and Steven Adams, so they are familiar with each other, but why would New Orleans want to acquire Patrick Beverley from Memphis when they could have just traded Bledsoe to Los Angeles for him to begin with? This is a very valid question to be answered, and maybe the Pelicans does not have interest in Patrick Beverley, but they do potentially have a roster spot should they waive Wenyen Gabriel before his contract becomes fully guaranteed, and they could use an experienced defender in their backcourt. Devontae Graham and Tomas Satoransky are not really known to be great defenders at the point guard position, and the Pelicans struggled defensively last year, which is why adding a veteran guard like Beverley would make sense. The Pelicans also has the capability to acquire him rather easily too, given that they have a $17 million trade exception that they created from trading Steven Adams to the Grizzlies a month ago. A lot of what the Pelicans may do with this potential open roster spot really depends on what happens with Josh Hart though over the next few weeks. The young wing is still unsigned and is a restricted free agent, so the Pelicans could just easily look to bring him back on a small deal and waive Wenyen Gabriel instead of using their large trade exception on a one-year rental of Patrick Beverley. If the Pelicans does not bring back Hartho and they let him go in free agency to sign elsewhere, then they could look to target another backcourt talent. The Pelicans want to win right now, and adding Beverley to their roster definitely improves them in an area on the court in which they have struggled mightily. Dallas Mavericks. Bringing in Reggie Bullock, Sterling Brown and re-signing both Tim Hardaway Jr. and Boban Marjanovic are all solid moves made by the Dallas Mavericks this offseason, but they are still nothing more than a team who could reach the Western Conference semifinals. Luka Doncic is a terrific player, but he can only carry this Mavs team so far, which is why they need more secondary talent if they cannot land another All-Star near the trade deadline. The Mavericks ranked 17th in the league last season in scoring, which is just okay given their standards, but they finished 20th in net defensive rating, which is lower than they would like. Finding ways to get better defensively needs to be something the Mavericks look into at some point during the season, which is why adding Beverley could be advantageous to them. For years now, Patrick Beverley has been known to be one of the better defenders in the league at the guard position, and in Dallas next to Luka Doncic, he could take on the responsibility of creating opportunities for Doncic to go out in transition and get quick baskets because of his abilities to play hard-nosed defense against the best of the best. The thing about the Mavericks that could hurt them this upcoming season is that they are not going to overpower their opponents on either end of the floor. They are a very average team in terms of scoring, which is why they need to be able to convert defense to offense rather quickly, especially in transition. Adding Beverley does not make them the best defensive team in the league, but this would be a move that allows the Mavericks to focus more on attacking on offense. Patrick Beverley can hold his own on both ends of the court and has proven to be an asset for his team, which is why the Mavericks should be interested in adding him for depth behind Luka Doncic in the backcourt. If you enjoyed this video and want to hear from me again, be sure to hit that subscribe button before you go.